And welcome back. So over 100 JMPD members are taking the Municipal Law Enforcement Department to the South African Local Government Bargaining Council to stop the re-advertisement of some 200 posts. They allege that they were shortlisted for these posts last year and the employer illegally abandoned the process. In papers before the council, the group says that the city's HR is quoted as saying that the process lapsed because the vetting took too long. Let's now get a sense of what is happening. We are joined in studio by Advocate Tiyani Vukeya, who's joining us in studio. He's the counsel representing the JMPD employees. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. So there was that advertisement that went out, was it June last year?
It went out in June, on the 28th of June last year. The closing date was on the 11th of July.
Yeah. Then what happened?
And they shortlisted. The interviews started they ran from September up until November. They then were called for vetting on the 5th and the 6th of December. And some of them in January, they were called by the vetting section, which is also part of the city, to resubmit their qualification, as some of them were not clear enough for them to finalize the vetting process. So in terms of their policy says they need to appoint on advertised posts within a space of 6 months. Mm-hmm. So if you calculate 6 months from the 11th of July, that takes them to the 11th of January, that they should have finalized that process by then and appointed. But you are now looking at posts of more than 200 officers. They interviewed more than 500 candidates, which practically it becomes a challenge to comply with that the 6 months, and more especially given the fact that they started late with the interviews. I mean, the post closed on the 11th of July. The interviews only started in September, so the whole of August was wasted. So they even went over the 6 months while they were finalizing the vetting process, and from January up until August, there was no communication from the city as to the appointments. The employees then wrote a petition to the city to say, but give us an update as to what's happening with the appointment, because you have just been quiet on it.
Yeah, but according to HR, the vetting process wasn't finalized.
We hold different instructions on that to say it was finalized in January. But even if, let's say, even if it was not finalized, why had they not communicated that to the employees? Because they went for vetting on the 5th and 6th of December. Surely it cannot take them more than 8 months to finalize the vetting. And we are also in process of trying to subpoena some of the documents from them that would clearly prove that indeed the vetting process was finalized for most of them in December. For those with outstanding qualifications which were not clear, it was finalized in January.
So how then, what's your argument around the technical aspect that is put forward by the HR, that, as you've indicated as well, that the appointments should be done within 6 months, and that hasn't happened, right? It should be finalized within 6 months. That hasn't happened. The argument is because it was the delay in getting the vetting process done, the Group Forensic and Investigations Unit, which is responsible for screening and vetting, because that didn't happen, that affects the talent and acquisition policy, which speaks to this issue that the appointments must happen within 6 months, otherwise they must go for re-advertisement.
You see, with the conduct of Mr. Zondo, I think we should just put aside the 6 months period, and I'll tell you why. When they sent the petition on the 15th of August, Mr. Zondo responded on the 29th of August and said, look, we are not going to appoint because...
That's 2024.
Yes, we are not going to appoint because the vetting process took more than 6 months. But on the 4th of September, he then sends all of them with rejection letters. I mean, you can't have the two. It's either you do not appoint and cancel, or you appoint and reject some of the applicants. So, but he says we cannot appoint, but he still then sends them rejection letter to say you were not successful. If you send a rejection letter to say you are not successful, you are simply saying that we have went through your interview, we have went through your vetting, and we are not satisfied that you qualify for the post. So he can't even use the 6 months period if he sent them letters on the 4th of
But
September.
technically, wouldn't it be right to say that because of that 6 months that has lapsed, therefore, according to the talent acquisition policy, they have to go back to re-advertisement? But whatever has happened, we don't know what happened, what caused the delay, but according to the talent acquisition policy, they can't make these appointments. They have to go for re-advertisement.
Yeah, but then it gives them an option to ask for an extension of the period. And if you look at the number of officers they had to interview, there were more than 500. Secondly, the period of December was also part of the 6 months. Technically, from your 10th, 15th of December up until your 10th, 15th January, no one is working during that period. So you cannot really also count that period to say that was part of the period on which we had to appoint while they were not even working, while the managers were not even at work. How were they then supposed to appoint them if they were not at work? What the HR could have done, they should have asked for an extension and substitute it by saying, look, we had to interview more than 500 employees. We had to do vetting of more than 200 employees. There's a period of December which is also part of the period on which we had to appoint. And it was practically impossible for us to issue and finalize such appointments during that period.
Okay. In that petition that was sent to the Chief of the Police of Public Safety, JMPD, in that petition, your clients make this argument. They say that the entire process, the re-advertising of these positions without considering the candidates who have already been taken through, the entire process will always raise the suspicion that the positions were reserved or earmarked for favorite candidates, quote, nepotism, so you're accusing them of nepotism, rather than appointing the deserving candidates on merit, which is demoralizing in the end. Is there any evidence, though, to point to nepotism?
We were still waiting for that from the employees. They say they have, and there were also meetings which were held between some of the managers to that effect, and we're also in the process of trying to subpoena the minutes of such meetings. But as we stand here, we have not yet received the evidence on that, but we have been advised that there is such evidence.
Okay. We have reached out to the JMPD and asking them for a right of reply to the story, that we are going to be having this interview. Yesterday, we did send the request, and this morning, this is what they had to say. Good morning. Unfortunately, the matter has not been brought to my attention. I'll have to tap in with the human rights management and get clearance from leadership to speak on this. This is the message that we got from the spokesperson from the JMPD. We'll try and get an update from them. That matter is before the Bargaining Council later on this morning. But I think from a broader aspect as well, Advocate, is the issue around the impact that this then has on service delivery for individual citizens living in the city.
Yes. So the JMPD appointed about 1,500 metro police officers. Those metro police officers need to be supervised. They are supervised by sergeants. And as it stands, you have some of the sergeants, the ones who applied for this position, they've been acting on such position, some of them for more than 6 years. So you will have one sergeant supervising. 6 years? Yes, but some is even more than 10, acting as a sergeant. So you will have some of these sergeants supervising way more than what they should supervise. You can't even manage to supervise way more than what you should supervise. Then that then causes chaos within the structures of JMPD in terms of who needs to do what and what needs not to be done. And they are also demoralized. I mean, some of them even went on deportation. Some had stroke, and some are not even willing to work because even some of them who are acting, they've been acting without even paid. Some of them have not even been paid for over a year, but you are on an acting position. And the acting position costs the city more than the permanent position. So if these employees were to be appointed on a permanent basis, the city will also save money because now they...
What are you putting then before the South African Local Government Council this morning?
So this morning is conciliation, which will not be party to the process, because the process of conciliation were not party to it. So it will just be between the employer and the employee. But what the employee wants is that to say, promote us, because this is an issue of promotion. Because these were internal advert. It was an internal
yes.
advertisement. So you need to employ the officers you already in your employ. So they just want the city to promote them to the position of sergeants, to which some of them have already been acting.
Advocate Tiyani, thank you so much.